Wait a minute, don't leave me here, I screamed. My husband, in response, simply said, "Come back when your leg is healed." With that, he abandoned me in the mountain wilderness. Wait! Don't leave me here! I cried out again, only for my husband to smirk, give me a glance, and then turn his back to me. Without my phone, he left me stranded in the mountains. Overcome with fear, I desperately reached out for his retreating figure, knowing my hand couldn't reach him. My legs were broken, encased in plaster casts. There was no way I could catch up with him as he walked away swiftly while I was crawling on the ground. My husband cheerfully climbed into his car and drove off in a flash. My name is Jennifer, a 35-year-old office worker. My family consists of my husband Robert, who is 3 years older than me and also works in an office. We're in our 3rd year of marriage and have no children, working together as a couple. Robert, being a traditionalist, doesn't do any housework. Not only does he not help me with chores, but he also tends to say things like, "Hey, pass me the remote. Could you make me a cup of tea? I can't find that. Bring it here." Even when the items are right in front of him. Initially, I was also working, and I told him a few times, "Hey, I work too, help me out a bit." But he just responded, "I'm the one bringing in more money. It's only natural for you to do it." When I asked him again to help, he started to respond with, "Stop nagging me," and would slam down the newspaper or a cup just to make a point. Eventually, he started to ignore my morning greetings and wouldn't even respond when I tried to engage him, so I gave up. Since then, I've been doing all the household chores by myself. I must admit, there are times when I'm exhausted from work and I wish he would help me. But I figured it's better to put up with it than to be subjected to complaints or be ignored. One day, I was on my way to work. I saw a child about to fall down the stairs at the train station. Without a second thought, I darted out in front of him, shouting, "Watch out!" and shielded the child from the fall. However, I couldn't stop myself and ended up tumbling down the stairs while holding the child. The scenery whirled around me, and I felt intense pain in my arms and back. While falling, I heard a dull snapping sound, followed by a pain so severe it was incomparable to anything I had experienced before. When I finally came to a stop, I checked the child in my arms, who seemed to be so stunned that he had forgotten to cry. Relieved that he was not seriously injured, I tried to stand up, but ended up collapsing due to the intense pain in my legs. I asked the station staff, who had come running over, to call an ambulance, and I was transported to the hospital. As expected, the result was that I had broken my leg. Upon reaching the hospital, I called Robert and explained the situation, asking him to come to the hospital. "I'm sorry for making you come. It might be a little dramatic, but I ended up having to get a cast." "Don't worry about it. Let's get you home first. Don't worry about anything here." Robert seemed genuinely worried. "What a kind husband you have," said the nurse standing by, to which Robert replied, "Well, I always help around the house." He shows off with a blatant lie. I was taken aback for a moment, thinking, what the? But didn't want to make a fuss right then and there, so I kept quiet. When we got home, Robert's attitude took a complete 180. "Hey, I'm hungry. Get me some food. Oh, and iron this shirt while you're at it." He demanded household chores of me. Being wheelchair-bound and unable to stand, I exclaimed, "What? Can't you see my condition? You said you'd take care of things while I was in the hospital." Stunned by my words, he retorted, "I only said that because you were in the hospital. Get it done, would you? You couldn't have possibly protected the kid. You're too clumsy. You can't move that quickly." It appeared that Robert didn't trust what I was saying. "That's not true. Why would you say something so cruel?" "Doesn't really matter, does it? Are you taking time off work? What about your salary?" Robert seemed more concerned about the money than my well-being. I had been told that I would receive some sort of compensation from my job for the time I was off, but it would be less than my usual salary. "You can't do household chores or bring in a salary," You're really useless, he criticized. As I was too stunned to respond, Robert plunked down on the sofa and grumbled loudly. Why on earth did I marry such a woman? Why would you say something like that? It's not like I wanted to be in this condition. Enough with your yammering. If you have the energy to whine so much, start taking care of things around the house. You're capable of doing that, aren't you? Without even making eye contact, Robert yelled at me. I felt a sense of darkness overcoming me and blurted out, "That's enough. If you're going to be like that, I'm going back to my parents' house." Robert seemed more than ready for this. "All right then, I'll drive you there," he chirped as he went to grab the car keys. I packed only the bare essentials in a bag, using my crutches to get around. Robert didn't even bother to help me into the car with my crutches, instead complaining, "Hey, what's the holdup? Get in already!" He carelessly tossed my bag into the car, clearly irritated. My parents' home was a 2-hour drive across the mountains from where we lived. I felt a bit suspicious that Robert was willing to drive me all the way there, but I had no choice but to rely on him at the moment. Robert remained irritated, clicking his tongue every time we hit a red light. I figured I could just think about what to do next after I got to my parents' home. While lost in these thoughts, the car gradually left the city behind and started entering the mountainous area. Before long, there were only a few streetlights and hardly any houses around us, with nothing but the straight road stretching ahead. Robert's irritated demeanor didn't change, and all I could think about was getting to my parents' home as soon as possible. Suddenly, the car came to a stop. "Wait, what's wrong? Did we run out of gas?" Surprised, I turned to ask Robert, only to be yelled at. "Get out of the car here!" "Huh? Here? Why? I can't be stranded out here." "Shut up! Don't come back until you're walking again." Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine this scenario. Despite my desperate attempts to hold onto the seatbelt and the door, Robert forcefully shoved me out of the car. As I shouted, begging him not to leave me, he simply smirked, got back in the car, and left. Unable to move, all I could do was cry out as loud as I could. But Robert made a U-turn, and the car soon disappeared back the way it came. He left me without my bag or my belongings. My phone was in my bag, so I had no way to contact anyone. It was evening when I left the house, and the surroundings were getting darker and darker. I was at my wit's end, unsure of what to do next. I had let my folks know I was coming home, but I had no idea if they would come looking for me. I began crawling, inching my way towards where there might be people. Soon, my breath hitched from the pain and exhaustion, and looking back, I could see I hadn't made much progress. Suddenly, I heard the light, rapid footsteps of someone approaching. A woman in jogging clothes came into view. When I desperately called out for help, she sped up and ran over. "What happened? What are you doing all alone here? And what's with the outfit?" Following her gaze to my leg, I saw the cast, dirty from dragging on the ground, and my clothes partially worn out from rubbing against the asphalt. Through tears, I explained my situation. The woman responded, "My home is just around the corner. I'll bring my car. Just wait here." She then removed her windbreaker and draped it over me. All I could do was express my gratitude and pray that she would return as I waited. True to her word, she was back in her car within about 5 minutes. "I'll take you to my place. Where do you live? Oh, but first, we should probably go to the hospital." Besides providing me shelter in her car, she even offered to drive me home. I suggested that we should go to my parents' house first, as they might be worried. She agreed. Her name was Patricia, and she was incredibly empathetic as I cried and told her my story. Her strong condemnation of what happened to me, saying it was inhumane and beyond forgiveness, gave me a sense of relief and caused even more tears to flow. We ended up bonding over our shared disdain for my husband, Robert, and before I knew it, we had arrived at my parents' place. "Thank you so much. Please, come in so I can express my gratitude properly." I invited her in to show my thanks. At first, she declined, saying she had work the next day. However, since I couldn't walk on my own, she helped me to the entrance of the house. My mother, who had come out to greet us, repeatedly thanked Patricia, eventually persuading her to come inside. Once inside, my parents and I thanked Patricia profusely. I then explained to my parents why I had returned and how Patricia had helped me. "What a jerk! You should divorce him right away. Anyways, you can stay here until your leg is healed." My father was angry and suggested divorce. "You should get some rest first." My mother, also worried, suggested. But I had something I needed to do. "I'll call Robert." I decided to use the home phone to contact Robert. My parents were standing by my side. "You're home already? Come back as soon as you're healed. Who do you think will take care of the house without you?" Robert showed no signs of remorse. Because I had put the call on speakerphone, my parents could hear everything. Upon hearing Robert's words, they were furious. "What the hell is he saying? He's got a lot of nerve." My father was yelling into the phone, his voice loud and full of fury. My mother, too, wearing a stern expression. Even though his words must have reached the other end of the line, Robert was ignoring him, repeating demands that I should get back to housework once healed. "Impossible. I can't be with you anymore. Let's get a divorce." Robert heaved a deep sigh, saying, "Why does it have to come to this?" As if it was all my fault. I let out an equally weary sigh, quickly hung up the phone. Behind me, my parents were seething at Robert's audacious attitude, and it took quite some time to calm them down. The following day, our house phone was ringing persistently. It wasn't the type to display who was calling, but I had a hunch it was probably Robert. I kept ignoring it, but the calls just wouldn't stop. It occurred to me that maybe it really could be someone else, since it was during Robert's work hours. And when I picked up, Robert's frantic voice pierced through the phone. "Finally! Hey, why did you ignore me?" "Never mind that. Help me out. I'm about to get fired." Robert didn't even check if it was me who picked up, and just started complaining about his imminent firing. "Oh, really? And what do you want me to do about it? Your job is none of my business." His pleading voice came through the phone, but I just ignored it and put the receiver down. If he's getting fired, serves him right, I thought. Turns out Patricia was Robert's mistress. As she heard my story in the car, she began to suspect that Robert was eerily similar to her boyfriend. And when I phoned Robert about the divorce, Patricia was certain upon hearing his voice. When she asked for a picture and I showed her, she broke down, collapsing onto her knees. I, too, was in the dark about Robert's infidelity. I was completely put at ease by Robert, who had no business trips, no working on his days off. I was furious for being neglected and cheated on. But Patricia's rage far surpassed my expectations. According to Patricia, she had met Robert at her workplace. Her workplace was a subsidiary of Robert's company. She was working part-time there when she encountered Robert, who was visiting on business. Robert began to visit her and wanted to establish a personal relationship. After hearing from colleagues that Robert was divorced, he himself also explained to her about his divorce history. Patricia, drawn by his seemingly sincere character, started dating him under the premise of future marriage as suggested by Robert. But his true nature was a man who not only lied about being married, but abandoned his injured wife in the wilderness. Patricia, enraged at herself for being fooled by such a man, wore a chillingly scary smile. Her revenge probably led to Robert's dismissal. After I hung up on Robert, Patricia called me. "He's in a real mess. My uncle got furious about this and fired him." The uncle Patricia was referring to was the president of Robert's company. It turns out the president and Patricia are uncle and niece. Patricia, who has health issues and finds it difficult to work long hours, started working part-time at her uncle's subsidiary, which is close to her home. She told me she was jogging in the mountains that day as a way to build strength and save money she would have spent on gym memberships. Apparently, the CEO doesn't have any children of his own and seems to have doted heavily on his niece, Patricia. Patricia, however, didn't want it known that she had such a connection, as they worked in different places and had different surnames, and thus, she never mentioned it to Robert. That's probably why he didn't know. But be careful, she warned. According to my uncle, Robert was saying a lot of inappropriate things. I suspect he'll be heading to your place again. Just as Patricia had said over the phone, Robert showed up at my parents' house that night. Perhaps because he got no response to his calls. He knocked loudly on the front door, screaming at the top of his lungs. "You got me fired from my job! You come too! Explain everything to the boss and apologize!" According to Robert, he was fired because I supposedly instigated Patricia. He seemed to think that the boss misunderstood because I exaggeratedly told Patricia about his affair after I found out. It occurred to me then, this is what Patricia meant by inappropriate. But my father had already opened the front door. "Misunderstanding my foot? How dare you ask my daughter to apologize after you cheated on her? You got what you deserved. Now get out of here." My father shoved Robert out of the doorway, took a glance at him groveling and begging for forgiveness, and slammed the door shut, locking it. Yet, we could still hear him causing a ruckus outside, so I spoke to Robert through the intercom. "Let me clarify something since you still don't get it. You think you got fired because you laid hands on the boss's niece? You should know better. The boss had explained everything, from A to Z." From the CEO's perspective, this incident was seen as an employee from the parent company deceived an employee from the subsidiary company into an extramarital affair. Moreover, because he was dealing with a part-time employee who was in a weaker position than a regular employee, it wasn't just a simple affair, as Robert put it. There isn't a CEO who would overlook such a bad example of a parent company taking advantage of a subsidiary. Even though the CEO himself had scolded Robert countless times, Robert still thought it was just about his affair. The affair just happened to be with the boss's niece this time, but it would have been a sackable offense no matter who the other party was. If you just explained that you didn't have an affair, don't you realize how absurd that sounds? If you don't want to get arrested on top of being fired, just go home. As for the divorce, get ready to deal with a lawyer. Only then did Robert fall silent. Finally, peace returned to my parents' home. After that, I hired a lawyer and divorced him. Furthermore, after consulting with Patricia, the two of us decided to sue Robert for damages. I sued Robert for the pain and suffering of being cheated on, and Patricia sued him for the pain and suffering of being deceived into a relationship under the pretense that he was single. Robert, who was fired for disciplinary reasons and therefore had no severance pay, turned to his parents for help. But as soon as I decided to get a divorce due to this incident, I had already called Robert's parents. Upon learning this, Robert's parents were furious and refused to lend him any money. However, since he couldn't afford to pay the damages without their help, they decided to make him work at a company they knew. At that company, Robert was at the very bottom of the hierarchy, and he couldn't look down on people as he used to, thinking he was from a parent company or a subsidiary. Moreover, the reason why he was working there was well known, and he was made to work like a horse while being looked down upon every day. However, from Patricia and I's point of view, we don't care where the money comes from, as long as the alimony is paid, and we are not interested in how Robert is treated. After that, my fracture healed, and I got along well with Patricia as friends. The combined damages from the two of us amounted to a decent sum, so we were planning to go on a trip next time.
Next week, let's go to the vacation home and have a barbecue.
When Dad said that, our family was thrilled. The vacation home is an hour-and-a-half drive away. I always enjoyed the drive there, and going to the vacation home was always something to look forward to. People might think we're rich when I mention the vacation home, but my parents bought it during the so-called bubble era. I don't know much about it, but apparently back then it wasn't just the rich who bought vacation homes. It was common even among ordinary people. Dad, let's go fishing. Going fishing with Dad in the nearby river was a tradition when we went to the vacation home. Meanwhile, Mom and Melissa would play in the river or relax at the vacation home. This vacation home, which our family often visited, was filled with memories. I remember the time I drove my parents there as an adult. They were both moved. But then, Mom passed away from illness, and 3 years later, Dad followed her. They were a loving couple, so I think they must be living happily together in heaven. With that thought, I am riding my motorcycle to the vacation home after a long time. My name is Casey. I am a 30-year-old clerical worker. I love motorcycles, and since getting my license, I often go touring. It's definitely influenced by my father. People say it's a masculine hobby, but I like what I like. I am enjoying my life now and not actively looking for a boyfriend or husband. I hope to find a good partner eventually, but I'm not actively looking right now. Melissa, who is 6 years older, got married before Mom passed away and is now a mother of 2. We used to be close, but I don't get along with Lucas, so we hardly see each other. Lucas, 3 years older than Melissa, started a business and he often belittles me for being just a clerical worker in a small company. So I avoid him as much as possible. If you start a business, you're the president, whether you have 1 employee or 100. President is president. Whether it's pride or something else, I often hear him say, "I am the president." Well, it doesn't matter to me. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was about 6 months before my father passed away. His chronic illness worsened and he was hospitalized. Living close to my parents' house, I often visited and watched over my father. I was estranged from Melissa and her husband at the time, but I felt it would be unfair to my father not to tell Melissa if something happened, so I told her the situation. The hospital was about a 30-minute drive from Melissa's house. I thought she would come to visit, but she never did, saying it was too hard to bring the 2 kids. I never heard from my father that Melissa had come, so she probably didn't. Lucas is head over heels for Melissa, and he has spoiled and flattered her since they were dating. And Melissa has come to think that's normal and her attitude towards others has changed. In a word, she's lost her compassion. When she got married, I think she stopped thinking of us as family. "My new family is my family," she declared. Probably she found our parents who would scold her for being selfish annoying. Living a life spoiled by Lucas who would let her do anything, I didn't want to be involved with Melissa and her husband, and I have hardly been in touch with them since Melissa's wedding. Yet the moment I informed them of my father's death, Melissa and her husband started to cozy up to me. At the funeral, Melissa whispered in my ear, "Hey, how much is the inheritance?" What? Is this the place to talk about that? I couldn't believe my ears, but Melissa's eyes were serious. Lucas, sitting next to her, was looking at me too. I'll sort it out later, so I don't know the details, but I don't think it's a significant amount. I had planned to pay for my father's hospital bills, but he insisted on using his savings, so we used what he had saved for the hospital expenses. Even after the funeral, I was busy greeting relatives and funeral home staff, but Melissa and her family were relaxing as if it were someone else's business. And as I passed by Melissa, she and her husband said, "Hey, can we go home now?" Sure enough, Melissa had changed. The old Melissa loved her father and would never have behaved this way at his funeral. She would have been sobbing, but this is how it is now. I became sad.
"Hey, we can't leave until we have settled the inheritance," Lucas said,
laughing. I was angered by his words and raised my voice without thinking. "So we can't talk about the inheritance now? Please go home. Thank you for coming today." Those were not words to say to Melissa and her husband. I knew it, but I didn't want to think of them as family. The funeral ended and I slept for a night, but I was so sad about various things that I jumped on my motorcycle and ended up at the vacation home. What should I do with this vacation home? It's also part of the inheritance. I was troubled. Then Melissa called me. When I answered the phone, Melissa suddenly said something outrageous. "Hey, Casey, Re-announce the inheritance? What? So that's how it is? When I fell silent, Melissa started talking on her own. After all, Casey, you're single, so you don't need money, right? We have 2 children and we never have enough money. You wouldn't understand being single, but raising children costs a lot. Melissa started talking about her children whenever she could. During the New Year's celebration, she would show up at her parents' house where relatives gathered, saying it was troublesome to stay long with the children only to take gift cards and sweets and leave. It was clear that she was after the gift cards. At some point, she became greedy for money and I began to dislike Melissa. And it's the same now that my father has passed away. Without mourning or thinking about my father, all she talks about is the inheritance. I was disappointed in Melissa. Hey, are you listening? So renounce the inheritance. Even if you call it an inheritance, most of my father's savings were used for hospital bills. So it's just the house and the vacation home. Besides, before I could finish, Melissa cut me off. All the more reason. If Casey renounces it, it will help us. There is no use talking to her anymore. But what will you do with the family home and the vacation home? You won't live in them, Melissa. Will you go to the vacation home for fun? You know, my family home is in Atlanta and no one lives there anymore, so selling it could make some money. As for the vacation home, I wonder what to do with it. I really wish you wouldn't sell the vacation home. It's filled with family memories. Casey, always talking about family. That's why you're not married yet. I was irritated by those words, but I somehow held back and continued. But lately, vacation home seems to be in demand, so maybe it could sell for a high price. It even has hot springs, so there must be many people who want it. Really? So if we sell that vacation home, we'll be rich? I could picture Melissa's excited face. I thought for a moment and decided to renounce the inheritance, but with one condition. Hey, how about you prepare the memorial service, Melissa? And if you plan to sell the house, use that money for the preparation? A memorial service? Oh, okay. So you'll renounce the inheritance then? Melissa's voice brightened. I was hesitant, but as a single person, I rarely visit the vacation home. If so, it would be better for Melissa's family to use it, and if Melissa decided to sell it, I would be fine with others using that memorable vacation home. I paused before replying. Gladly. So I decided to renounce the inheritance and return to my usual life. A year passed since my father's death. Melissa, how's the memorial service preparation? Casey, why are you contacting me now? Why are you angry? You've been ignoring my calls, Casey. Huh? Misunderstanding? Oh, right. I changed my mobile number. I had changed my number since my father's funeral, wanting to cut ties with Melissa and her husband. Of course, I hadn't told Melissa, so she couldn't contact me. I just called to check on the progress of the memorial service. So, is the memorial service ready? Huh? There's no way I could do it. I have 2 kids to take care of. You're single and free, Casey. You do it. I sighed. You promised back then, didn't you? This isn't what we agreed on. That's my line. What? What do you mean? You said the vacation home would sell high, so I thought I'd sell it right away, but it's not selling at all. Instead, I'm being charged thousands of dollars for maintenance and repair fees, and even for using the hot springs. What's going on? Oh, that I found out about it later. That's awful. It's a scam. A scam. Why, Melissa? You're the one who wanted me to renounce the inheritance, right? I said it might sell high, but that was just an amateur opinion. I didn't know if it would actually sell, but the family home sold, right? Oh, well, yes, Melissa stammered. That means the family home must have sold for a decent amount. Then use that money for the vacation home expenses and keep it for family use. If I want to use it, can I pay a fee? So Melissa, you really want to sell it? I asked Melissa the obvious question once more. How about renting out the vacation home then? You could set up tents in the yard for camping. Camping seems to be trendy, and you could keep the hot springs and turn the rest into a campground. Of course, I'm just an amateur, so maybe consult with a real estate agent? Melissa's voice brightened noticeably. That's an idea. I hadn't thought of that. By the way, I can arrange the memorial service if you will pay the cost as promised. If you don't pay, then transfer the rights to the vacation home to me. I don't really expect her to transfer the rights to me now, but I had to say it this way, or Melissa seemed likely to break her promise. Melissa, who thinks she found a use for the vacation home, obviously had no intention of giving it up. As expected, she nodded. Well, I guess so. The vacation home seems to be working out, so I'll cover the costs. Then I'll arrange it. Once the amount is settled, transfer the money to my account first. Understood. The memorial service went smoothly. Of course, I made sure to get the money in advance so there was no loss. After the memorial service, Melissa said, I'm glad Dad left us the vacation home. Our dreams are expanding. Lucas chimed in, Our future is secure now. I'm grateful to father-in-law. He never showed any gratitude before, but he says it now. I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I handled the conversation formally and left quickly. 3 months later, my mobile phone rang. Casey, you lied again. What now? What's the problem? The vacation home. Melissa was furious and kept talking. You said to rent it out, but no one wants it. And when I asked about turning it into a campground, they said tents are prohibited on that land. Now I'm just losing money. What are you going to do about it? Wow, that's tough. I didn't know that. I listened to Melissa's anger and nodded. It's not just tough, it's your fault, Casey. Why is it my fault? You were the one who got greedy and wanted to renounce the inheritance. If we had properly divided inheritance, I would have researched and considered selling or managing it, but it's yours, Melissa, so it's not my place to interfere. Since Melissa kept ranting about fraud and demanding I do something, I interrupted her. Besides, you have the money from selling the family home, right? It's not fair to take what you want and push off what's a burden. That money's long gone. What? I couldn't help but let out a stunned voice. Lucas failed in his business. Now we are in debt. The company of a man who always boasted about being a CEO and having business acumen went bankrupt? I couldn't help but laugh. That's really tough. I said the words, but I couldn't stop laughing. Hey, what are you laughing at? We have 2 kids, you know. Both of your kids are already in middle school, right? The older one is about to be a high school student. High school students can work part-time. And if the family pulls together, you can quickly handle that amount of debt. Well, if Melissa and Lucas can humble themselves and ask for help, that is. What? Casey, you're single. You can't understand what it's like to have a family. Sure. That was true until recently. What? Oh, I got married. My partner is a business trader. A business trader? Casey, where did you find such a wealthy person? Well, I think he earns more than our peers. He's a fellow motorcycle enthusiast. Melissa, you always told me to stop riding or I would miss my chance to marry, but I got married safely. I'll be a mother next year. What? So, just like Melissa, I'll be focusing on my new family. Please don't contact me anymore. Bye. I cheerfully hung up on the phone. I met my husband shortly after my father's death, and we hit it off right away. I think my worried father might have guided me to my husband. After my father's memorial service, my husband and I had a small wedding, and I soon discovered I was pregnant. I couldn't show my parents my wedding dress or their grandchild's face, but I'm sure they're watching from heaven. Dad, Mom, I'm very happy now.
Hey, do I have to call myself sister-in-law now? When I went to my fiancé's family home for a family meeting, Amy said this to me. Jude and his parents tried to intervene, but Amy wouldn't stop.
Why do I have to get involved just because Jude decides to get married on his own?
That was way out of line. Later, Amy was kicked out of the Brown house and both Jude and his parents apologized to me. But my first impression of Amy was terrible. My name is Lily. I am 32 and have been married for 3 years. My husband Jude is the same age as me, and he has a younger sister Amy, who is 5 years younger than us. I heard it from Jude, but Amy is what you call a troublemaker. In middle school and high school, she dyed her hair, wore nail polish, and got called out for breaking school rules countless times. Although she managed to graduate from high school, since then, she's been wandering around without holding down a steady job. Considering she's rarely home at night and seems to have a decent amount of money, Jude thinks she might be working at some kind of hostess club. But she hardly ever comes home, and since that family meeting, I've been told not to worry too much and have barely seen her. However, the other day, when Jude and I visited his parents' house, while having dinner with his parents, the front door suddenly opened, and we heard footsteps barging in.
Oh, didn't know Jude was here.
I hadn't seen Amy in a while, and she looked even more flashy than before, with an unfamiliar man standing next to her. Our dinner was interrupted, and everything went silent. Who's that? Just as everyone was thinking the same thing, Amy casually announced,
We're getting married.
and I stared in disbelief. The man with the flashy dyed hair and his hands still in his pockets gave a slight bow.
Yep, that's the deal. Nice to meet you.
It doesn't feel like they came for a family meeting at all.
Hey, serve us some food too. I'm hungry.
Amy spoke like a child, and that seemed to snap the Browns back to reality.
Marriage? Did you come for a family meeting today?
Yes, why?
Wait, is this supposed to be the family meeting? No way. Absolutely not. Neither of their attitudes makes any sense. As expected, the Browns were furious.
Amy, show some common sense. And you? Who even are you? Announcing marriage without even sharing your name with that attitude is ridiculous.
Exactly. It's outrageous. In our hearts, Jude, Camilla, and I were all silently cheering on the Browns. However, the couple just looked down on us with mocking laughter.
Haha, common sense. Who needs that to live? Besides, we're not asking for permission. Just informing. That's all. You guys are annoying. We'll go eat elsewhere.
Amy and Anthony left as quickly as a storm. The rest of us were left baffled. We just couldn't find the right words to describe our feelings. All the in-laws could mutter was, "This is disgraceful." 3 months later, out of the blue, I received a message from Amy.
Lily, I have a favor to ask.
I had a sinking feeling about this. As I humored her with a response, Amy started to talk freely.
Would you come to the wedding with Jude?
She really intends to get married.
Dad and Mom said they won't attend because they haven't been properly introduced yet. But it would be weird if no one from my side came, right?
I can totally understand her parents' feelings.
Jude hardly picks up my calls, so I can't discuss it with him. You're the only one I have, Lily.
True. Jude has been busy with work lately and probably doesn't have time to answer calls. I don't want to go, but as a woman, I understand the dream of a wedding, and it does seem sad if no family is present. I reluctantly replied.
Only if Jude says he'll come.
I hung up after saying that. When Jude came home and I told him about it, he said,
I noticed the call, but I've been too busy to answer. So Amy was really serious about getting married?
He echoed my sentiments. Later, when Jude tried contacting the Browns, they were still upset about Amy's attitude. They said,
She can marry as she pleases, but we won't attend the wedding.
Amy has apparently already moved out and is living with her boyfriend. After discussing with Jude, we figured that if Amy had moved out of her parents' house, once the wedding was over, we probably wouldn't see her for a while and avoid any drama. So thinking it would be our last involvement, we decided to attend the wedding, since her parents were attending and certainly wouldn't be funding the wedding. After discussing with Jude, we decided to give a generous wedding gift as a gesture of goodwill. It was the least we could do. However, despite waiting, we never received a formal wedding invitation and had to call Amy to get the date and venue details. A month later, when Jude and I arrived at the venue, we were surprised to see Amy in her usual casual attire.
Congratulations.
Despite my usual feelings about her, I decided to keep them in check and celebrate the occasion, so I delivered those words with a smile.
I'll go change now. The ceremony will be held over there. Oh, it's almost time. Hurry up.
With that, Amy left. We headed in the direction she indicated and found ourselves not in a chapel or a wedding reception hall, but an ordinary hall. Huh? What is this place? I expressed my confusion to Jude, who was also looking puzzled. This isn't a wedding. What's going on? And then the sight before us left me stunned. These people are the guests, right? I whispered to Jude, who reluctantly nodded in agreement. This looks like a club or a hostess club. The supposed guests had flashy and light hair colors, which seemed to be the norm. They looked frivolous, were prominently flaunting branded items, and their vulgar laughter echoed throughout. Well, considering who the couple is, perhaps this is to be expected. Trying to hold back my emotions and attempting to find some calm with Jude, I noticed something. Hey, where are the chairs? Jude, who was as stunned as I was, seemed to realize it too.
What? This is just a reception? Isn't it supposed to be a wedding?
As we stood there, confused, a frivolous-looking man, presumably the MC, picked up a microphone and began to speak. Now, let's welcome the bride and groom. The two entered from the open doors. I had assumed she'd be in a wedding dress, but while it was technically white, it was a cheap-looking sexy dress with a high slit. On her head, she wore a tacky tiara. The young crowd cheered them on with enthusiasm. Well, they were so flashy, I couldn't even tell if they were young anymore. Actually, who cares about that? I just want to leave this place. That's all I could think about. They played some cheesy How We Met video, but the only lingering question was, is it really okay to say they met at a hostess club? Jude, sitting next to me, seemed to share the same sentiment. Though it felt like an agonizingly long time, in reality, only 30 minutes had passed. I didn't feel like I could endure this to the end. As I contemplated making a quick exit, suddenly Amy approached us.
Hey, where's our wedding gift?
I've never seen a bride come to collect her gift in person. That said, we did prepare a wedding gift, thinking it would be a proper ceremony. We planned to give it when entering the venue, but no one was at the reception desk, so we missed the opportunity. I thought we could give it later, but I never expected her to ask for it directly. With a forced smile, Jude handed over the wedding gift. Meanwhile, the groom was downing drinks amid his friends' cheers. Among them, a man with flashy hair, but obviously much older, and a woman, heavily made up beyond her age. Must be the groom's parents. I guess it's a case of like father, like son. After Amy took the gift from Jude, she surprisingly turned to me, extending her hand.
Lily, I want your wedding gift too.
What?
The wedding gift. Give it to me now.
Jude, raising his voice a bit to interject, said,
Lily and I are a couple, so the gift covers both of us.
But then, looking visibly unsatisfied, Amy audibly clicked her tongue and unbelievably started to open the wedding gift right there. Wait, hold on. I tried to stop her in a hurry, but she completely ignored me. And after seeing the contents of the gift, Amy laughed mockingly and blurted out something outrageous.
What's this? Only $3,000?
Hey, Amy, hold on.
Jude hurriedly tried to intervene, but Amy was unstoppable.
I might be able to earn $3,000 in just one night,
she said while laughing. Why should we be talked down to like that? Especially when we gave a gift that was more than the usual rate. At that moment, all my restrained feelings exploded.
Listen, Amy,
don't you have any gratitude? Do you realize we gave you more than the usual amount? We gave that amount thinking it might help since Brown and Camilla said they wouldn't attend. Then, laughing, Amy responded.
Huh? Acting all high and mighty over a mere $3,000? What do you mean by help? It doesn't matter to me if my parents come or not. You're just someone who married Jude, right? Can you stop pretending to be family?
The audacity of her words made me laugh past my anger.
Right, I'm just someone who married Jude, not really family or anything. Well, this will be the last time, so please forgive me.
With that, I snatched the wedding gift from Amy and pulled out half of it, which was $1,500, and stashed it in my purse. I put the remaining $1,500 back into the wedding gift and shoved it into Amy's hands.
Hey, what are you doing? Give it back!
Seeing Amy's attitude and having no sentiment left for her, I spoke. Amy and I are strangers. I don't give wedding gifts to strangers. So I took back my share. Even though I'm married, Jude, you and I will remain strangers for life. As we were about to leave, Jude grabbed the wedding gift from Amy. My family is Lily, Amy. You're nothing to me. Don't ever come near us, Dad or Mom again. He took my hand and we left the venue. Although Amy seemed to be causing a commotion, the noise in the hall was too loud to make out her words. What in the world was happening? Maybe the so-called wedding was just a ruse to get wedding gifts. When Jude and I went to report the situation to his parents, their expressions were a mix of emotions.
Both of you, I'm truly sorry. Thank you.
Brown apologized to us.
She's our youngest and our only girl. I admit I might have spoiled her a bit too much growing up. I scolded her so much, but nothing ever got through to her. And then she just left her home.
Camilla, while apologizing, looked deeply regretful.
But she probably won't come back here, and I've told her to keep her distance. So, Dad, Mom, you can finally let go and find some peace.
Hearing Jude's words, his parents nodded with a complex expression. I thought that was the end of the Amy chapter, but it wasn't meant to be. A few days later, Amy showed up at our door.
Hey, how can you just leave without paying your share? I even took the trouble to come all the way here, so you should pay double and give back the wedding gift too.
Jude and I exchanged a look and sighed. Normally, if you give a wedding gift, you don't have to pay an attendance fee.
On the other hand, if there's an attendance fee, no wedding gift is expected. That's common sense, but according to you, the wedding gift is like a tip and the attendance fee covers the venue and meal costs, so pay both.
We're not giving any more wedding gifts. Frankly, we don't feel like celebrating anymore.
Hearing Jude's words, Amy puffed up her cheeks in anger.
Why? I'm your sister and I got married. How can you not give a wedding gift? That's just terrible.
Her words flitting between us made me furious.
Sister? I am your sister? After telling us not to pretend to be family, you come back later demanding a wedding gift? What are you thinking? We heard it was a wedding, so we attended out of kindness. But what was the reception? There wasn't even proper food. How much were you hoping to charge for that? The wedding gift is mine. Give it to me. And the party costs money too, so $200 per person. Pay up now. $200? For that tiny party? That's basically a scam. What are you talking about? There was plenty of alcohol, right? Plus the dress and flowers cost money.
Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh.
So mostly for alcohol, huh? The food was minimal and everything looked so cheap. By flowers, you mean the decoration at the venue? Or just the ones at the table where you sat? Because there weren't flowers on every table. Plus, there weren't nearly enough tables. If that's what you call spending money, then it's really a scam.
I poured out all the frustrations I felt that day.
And about the dress? It looked like something cheap you'd pick up anywhere. Even the guests had better dresses.
Amy probably hit right on the mark, said less, and glared at me.
Normally, weddings and receptions aren't for making money. It's about gratitude and hospitality, right? It's clear as day you two tried to cut costs, charge a high attendance fee, and pocket the difference. We also spent money and time preparing, not to mention the transportation cost. Honestly, I feel like you owe us.
Jude, not finding an opportunity to speak, just nodded in agreement beside me. Amy kept glaring at me the whole time. I had one last thing to say.
I don't have a single dime to give to someone who's not even family like you, Amy. You said you could make $3,000 in one night, right? Then why not just hold a free wedding? With a wedding as cheap as that, you should be thanking each guest, maybe even handing out $1,000 each for showing up. Just stay out of our lives,
I said with a laugh. Amy, either too stunned to respond or simply furious, glared at me and stormed off. Turns out, Amy and her husband had racked up significant debts from buying luxury brands and cars, and it seems they were trying to cover some of it with the wedding gifts and attendance fees. They even went to Jude's parents' house to demand for gifts and were rightly scolded. Jude's parents were livid. They told us if Amy ever showed up again causing trouble, we could call the police. Thankfully, we've had no contact from Amy since then, which has been a relief. In a way, it was a one-of-a-kind wedding experience, but we never spoke to that couple, who were basically strangers, ever again. Now, we're enjoying a quiet and peaceful life.
I was trembling with fear. My sister-in-law, Susanna, was yelling at me without any consideration. I have never been comfortable around her. Come on, hurry up and take care of your annoying mother. My mother had passed away from cancer just 3 days ago. Who does she think she's living with? My name is Nanny, a 45-year-old office worker. I've been married to Rob for 15 years, but we don't have any children. We tried treatments, but nothing worked. We considered adoption, but couldn't bring ourselves to do it. We both love kids, so it was a tough pill to swallow. I felt especially guilty towards Rob, but he said, "Kids aren't everything. We have each other. That's what matters." So we adopted a cat named Marianne. Marianne was a rescue from a hoarding situation. She was initially very aggressive, but now she's like a loving daughter to us. We have told my in-laws about our fertility issues, but they have been nothing but kind. Life was ordinary but happy until a few years ago when we started having issues with a certain individual, Susanna, the wife of my brother Morris. Susanna is 10 years younger than my brother and 8 years younger than me. I'm your sister-in-law, so show some respect, she told me the first time we met. I hadn't seen my brother much since our parents divorced when I was in 6th grade. He went with our dad and I stayed with our mom. After the divorce, my brother moved to our father's hometown. He had a hard time there, especially in school. Eventually, he began to resent our mother. 10 years ago, when our father passed away, my brother yelled at my mother and me during the wake. "I don't want to see your faces. You are not my family." We left quickly and my mother looked heartbroken. My brother had been told by our father and grandparents that he was abandoned by our mother, which was a lie. My mother always wanted to take him back, but my father wouldn't allow it. "I don't need a daughter. Take her and leave." I wasn't sad about it. My father was always a figure of terror for me. After that, we lost contact with my brother. But 3 years ago, he suddenly showed up at our house. "Hey, long time no see." It was awkward. The last time we had met was at our father's funeral. Then a petite woman appeared behind him. At the time, my brother was in his early 40s, but the woman looked much younger. Who is this and why are they here? Confused, I heard my brother say, "I got married. This is my wife, Susanna." The room went silent. Because my thought was, so what? When I got married, I reached out to my brother, but he never responded. No congratulations. No wedding gift. "Oh, really? Congratulations. Would you like to come in?" I thought it was odd that they just showed up, so I invited them in. "Ew, you have a cat? I hate cats. Shoo shoo." Susanna, my brother's wife, was rude right off the bat. Marianne, sensing something, hissed at Susanna. It had been a while since I had seen Marianne act like that, but I felt bad for stressing her out. "Coffee's fine," Susanna told me, then plopped herself down on a chair and turned on the TV. I had never met anyone so brazen. My brother just sat there watching TV, not saying a word to Susanna. Why are they even here, and who does she think she is? So rude. I made coffee, feeling irritated. As we made small talk, I learned that Susanna was 8 years younger than me. I was 42 at the time, so she's 34. How can someone be this clueless at 34? What does my brother see in her? I had nothing but questions. But there was something good about Susanna that only my brother knows. I didn't really care. Out of nowhere, she says, "You know, I'm your sister-in-law. You can't talk casually to me, it's common sense." This from the woman who showed up unannounced and disrespected our family pet Marianne? I had had enough. "Alright, Susanna, I have to go out, so..." I hinted for them to leave. My brother seemed to want to go too. "Alright, Susanna, let's go." As I was about to see them out, "Wait, we haven't received our wedding gift yet," she said. That's when I understood everything. My brother probably didn't want to come but was dragged here by her. How shameless can she be? I have never received a gift from my brother. Sorry, we weren't prepared for your visit. We'll come by later with a check." But Susanna said, "Who cares about your husband? Your brother's the one getting married. Cash is fine." I lost it. "Listen, brother. When I got married, you didn't even congratulate me, and now you bring this rude woman into my house?" My brother said, "Well, I told her I didn't want to come, but she insisted." I was still irritated. Susanna got upset at my words. "Didn't you learn to respect your elders? Just be happy for your brother's marriage. I may be younger, but I am your sister-in-law. Enough? I have to go. Please leave." I finally kicked them out. Outside, Susanna kept yelling, but anyone could see she was the unreasonable one. I hugged Marianne, who looked worried, and apologized. That night, I told my husband Rob everything. "Unbelievable," he said, equally appalled. "Who wouldn't say that? So what are we going to do about a gift?" I don't think we need to do anything. My brother never gave me anything, so it's fair, and after today, I doubt they will visit again. I don't plan on keeping in touch." My husband agreed. Later, I told my mom, who lives nearby, about the whole thing. She was shocked. From the looks of it, my brother hasn't visited her either. He probably still resents her. I couldn't expose my mom to such crazy people in her current state. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" My mom was diagnosed with cancer during a city health checkup last year. She had surgery, but her prognosis wasn't good. Given her frail health, she had more bad days than good. I offered to live together, but she declined. I moved to this house because it's close to hers. Finding a pet-friendly place was tough, but it was worth it. Since Mom got sick, I switched to a job that allows me to work from home so I could spend more time with her. So Morris has a wife now. That's good. What's she like? I couldn't tell Mom that Susanna was a nightmare, so I just said, she's lively. Mom seemed to believe me. Morris is a bit reserved, so a cheerful person will make their home happier, she said, smiling as if genuinely pleased. Mom never forgot about my brother, not for a single day. I hoped they would reconcile someday, but given my brother's behavior, it seemed unlikely. Mom seemed to know this too, as she never sent any congratulatory messages to him. Weeks later, while I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. My heart raced when I saw Susanna on the monitor. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but had to answer the door. The last time she visited, she made such a fuss that the property management warned me. What does she want now? I opened the door with the chain on. Susanna grinned and said, "Long time no see. I'm here for the wedding gift. You must be ready by now." I was glad the chain was on. "Where's my brother today?" Susanna looked annoyed. "I'm alone today. Hurry up." When I stayed silent, she said, "What? You don't want to give us anything? You're so stingy. You don't even have kids. You must have money." Her words about not having kids almost made me cry. "I don't need to see your tears," she added. What did I even do to her? I resented my brother for marrying her. Then my husband Rob appeared behind her. "Is there something you need?" Rob's imposing stature, Susanna was visibly intimidated.
Are you the husband? I'm Morris's wife, Susanna. I came to announce our marriage."
Rob interrupted, "I see. But we have no intention of celebrating your marriage, especially not to someone who verbally abuses my wife." Rob continued, "Isn't a wedding gift a matter of goodwill? Your actions could be considered extortion. Should we consult the police?" He took out his phone. He had recorded our conversation and showed it to Susanna. She couldn't say anything.
"You two are idiots. No wonder you can't have kids."
She yelled, then stormed off. "Sorry, I was late to help. She's even worse in person." I wouldn't want to marry someone like that, Rob said. I was truly grateful to him. We never saw my brother and his wife again. 3 years later, my phone rang. I usually don't answer unknown numbers, but when I did, I was greeted with a loud, "Stop it already!" I could only think of one person who would be this rude. What's this all about, Susanna? It was unmistakably the voice of my brother's wife, Susanna. She must have found my number from my brother's phone. I can't believe he's still married to her. He's a tough one. I listened to Susanna wondering if something had happened to my brother. As I listened, my face turned pale. I thought Susanna had finally lost it. I'm sorry, Susanna. What did you just say?
Come and get your annoying mother. She's been living with us for a month. A month! I'm going to bill you for all the living expenses.
I told her a fact she didn't expect. Susanna, I don't know what you're talking about. Did my brother tell you my mother passed away 3 days ago?
What? Who's going to believe that lie? I'm recording this call, you know. I'll take it to the police. I'm returning your mother, Isabel, tomorrow. Don't run away.
She hung up, yelling. I was confused. My mother had indeed passed away 3 days ago, and her funeral was about to start. And her name wasn't Isabel. It was Annie. Who is she living with? And she said a month. This is scary. My mother's health had been deteriorating, and her cancer had returned. She passed away peacefully 3 days ago. Final moments were such that she slept without much pain. I had informed my brother, but all he said was, "I won't go." I thought it would be the last moment at least, but if my brother didn't regret it, then I couldn't say anything. I wondered if I should tell my brother that Susanna had contacted me, but I didn't feel like talking. So I decided to accept Susanna's offer. The next day, my cat, Marianne, started acting restless. I knew she was coming. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang continuously. I was already furious. I opened the door to find a smug Susanna, a subdued-looking brother, and an unfamiliar older woman. Susanna barged in and made a face when she saw my husband. My husband looked at her disdainfully.
Pay me $3,000 for taking care of your mother for a month, and you lied to me on the phone yesterday. If you don't want to get reported, how about we settle for $10,000?
My brother's wife, Susanna, said to me with a proud look on her face. I chuckled and opened the door to the next room. Susanna, since you're here, why don't you pay your respect? Let me introduce you to my mother, Annie. I showed her my mother's portrait. My brother muttered, "Mom?" Susanna finally believed me.
What's going on? Explain.
She yelled. She grabbed my brother's collar. The older woman shouted,
Please stop. Let Morris go.
I realized she must be my brother's mistress. Susanna was in a frenzy, hurling insults at my brother. Seeing that the conversation was going nowhere, I intervened. If you keep making a scene, I'll call the police, okay? She glared but calmed down. Then my brother began to speak softly. I wanted to leave Susanna for a long time. I was deceived. My brother and his wife Susanna originally met at work. Before they got married, Susanna seemed like a demure woman. Turns out she was just putting on an act. Her true nature was anything but pleasant. My brother had no control over his salary. She gave him a measly $10 allowance per month. Susanna, who was only after his money, quit her job as soon as they got married. She lounged around at home, never lifting a finger to do any housework, and spent his money however she pleased. When my brother finally decided to divorce her, she told him,
I will never divorce you. You'll work for me for the rest of your life.
It was like he was living as her slave. The last time I saw my brother 3 years ago, he had lost a lot of weight. In stark contrast, Susanna had gained a lot. It was clear he was living a miserable life. Around that time, my brother met Isabel. Despite their significant age difference, they were drawn to each other, and she reciprocated his feelings. He lied and said Isabel was our mother, hoping that Susanna would eventually get fed up and leave. But for Susanna, it was just another servant added to her household. My brother told Susanna, "My sister asked me to take care of our mom for a while. She'll cover the expenses." What a terrible thing for him to say. So you're an idiot, huh, big bro? I'm sorry.
You lied to me? Are you kidding?
Fed up with Susanna's yelling, I said, "Can we wrap this up? We are grieving the loss of our mother. Please take your leave." Frustrated, Susanna turned red and boasted,
I'm going to get rich off the divorce settlement from you two idiots. Maybe I'll buy a fancy apartment.
"All right then, good for you," I replied, making her even angrier. I handed my brother an envelope. "This is from Mom. Just before she passed away, I had received a letter from her for my brother." Reading it, he broke down in tears. Isabel gently rubbed his back. I felt he could finally live a peaceful life with her. That's how I felt. Then my husband Rob said, "Brother-in-law, you should definitely sue her for the emotional distress she's caused you. I'll introduce you to a lawyer I know. In return, please never show up in front of us again." My brother nodded silently. In response,
Susanna arrogantly said, You think a man can sue for emotional distress? That only works for a woman.
"That's for the law to decide, not you." My husband calmly retorted. I felt so grateful to be married to him. Eventually, my brother and Susanna got divorced. He remarried Isabel. Since Susanna had squandered most of his money, there wasn't much left for the settlement. My brother's claim for emotional distress against Susanna was successful. Of course, he also had to pay her some alimony, but it was covered by his and Isabel's savings. In the end, Susanna was left with almost nothing. We thought, serves her right. Now, in her late 30s, Susanna's search for marriage and re-employment will not be so easy. A woman like that cannot even remarry. Let her struggle. After the ordeal, we moved. Our new home is close to my husband's workplace, and the view is beautiful. We can even have a cat. I'm thinking of quitting my remote job and going back to work outside the home. As I looked out the window and gently stroked our sleeping cat, Marianne, I felt grateful for the peaceful life we now have.
She's pregnant. Divorce me. My world goes dark at my husband's outrageous words. He hands me divorce papers and a meager settlement, then coldly kicks me out. I have nowhere to go, barely holding back tears. But then, right after, a life-changing phone call comes in. My name is Evelyn. I'm 30 years old. I've been married to Samuel for 2 years. By all accounts, I should be living the newlywed dream. But my current reality is far from happy. It all started when Samuel brought up the idea of living with his parents before we got married.
Hey, Evelyn, how about we live with my parents?
We've never talked about that before.
Look, I travel a lot for work. I worry about leaving you alone.
Samuel, you're overreacting. I'm an adult, you know.
I don't want anything to happen to you. My mom's at home, and since you're working too, she could help out around the house. It could be easier for you.
Well, maybe, but despite my reservations, Samuel kept repeating that he was worried about Evelyn. Foolishly, I took his words to heart, thinking he really cared for me. As a result, I reluctantly agreed to move in with his parents. The day after we officially tied the knot, all the moving was done, and once things settled down, I took a moment to give my mother-in-law a proper greeting. Mother-in-law, thank you for having me from today. I look forward to being part of the family. Mother-in-law glares at me and sighs,
Yeah.
Would you like some coffee?
No need. Instead, why don't you go unpack? It's annoying to have all those boxes lying around.
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. I'll get right on it.
Ugh, do I have to tell you to do everything? What kind of upbringing did you have?
From day one of moving in, I received harsh words from my mother-in-law. Not wanting to upset her, I quickly began to unpack. Anxiety swirled in my head. She seemed really mad. We're going to be living together, so I really want to get along if possible. But despite how I feel, my mother-in-law's snide remarks just keep escalating. Before heading to work, I prepare breakfast and set the table. Since my husband and father-in-law leave the house early, I inevitably end up eating with mother-in-law. She takes a bite of the pancake and shouts, "What is this? Evelyn, what on earth is wrong with these pancakes?" Didn't they suit your taste? Suit my taste? They're horrendous. You expect me to eat this? I did taste test multiple times, and it seemed fine to me. That just means your taste is off. Remake them, now. Her unreasonable demands often made me nearly late for work. Living with her was pushing me to my limits. One day, as I was checking my phone between chores, mother-in-law began berating me in front of my husband. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" Mother-in-law, I just finished hanging laundry, so I was taking a break." "A break, you say? Who do you think you are?" "I'm sorry, but I finished all the household chores." "Don't talk back. Wives don't have the luxury of breaks. Find something to do and keep working. Got it?" But... "No buts. If you get it, go clean the staircase, you failure of a wife." "Failure of a wife? I was just taking a short break. Why does she have to go this far?" That was the moment it clicked with me, and I decided to talk to my husband that night. "Samuel, you saw mother-in-law scolding me today, right?" "Huh? Was something going on?" "You were in the living room. She called me a failure of a wife just because I took a little break." My husband sighed deeply and opened his mouth. "Look, if my mom said that, you must have really messed up. It means you're falling short, Evelyn." What are you saying, Samuel?" "I'm also disappointed in you." "What?" "I thought you'd be a better wife, but as my mom said, you lack awareness. Be more responsible." "What? Lack awareness as a wife? What does that even mean? I'm doing all the housework, even though the premise of moving in was that mother-in-law would help out. I also have a job. Why do I have to endure this much?" From that day on, my husband turned a blind eye. No matter how much mother-in-law bad-mouthed me or even threw things at me, he ignored it. He was already often away on business trips and started spending even less time at home. Thoughts of divorce popped into my head daily, but I had a reason to hang on. It was because of my father-in-law. He was the only one who stood by me. Mother-in-law usually didn't harass me in front of father-in-law, but sometimes our paths did cross. "Evelyn, is the front entrance clean yet?" Yes, right away." "After that, you have to weed the garden. I told you just yesterday." "I'm sorry. It started raining yesterday." "You're just slow. That's the issue. Useless. You neglect housework because you're always working." I'm sorry." Just as I apologized, my father-in-law's voice rang out. "What's going on here?" You. What have you been saying to Evelyn?" "Well, she's slow, so, You're having her do all this for you, and then you talk to her like that?" "But she really is slow. The garden is still full of weeds, and even the food doesn't taste good, and there's not enough of it." "Weren't you the one who never touched the garden before we all moved in? And don't you always bring home ready-made meals? If you're going to complain, at least be able to do it yourself." Fine. Whatever." Whenever my father-in-law confronts her with these truths, my mother-in-law retreats to her room. Each time he apologizes to me sincerely. "Evelyn, I'm really sorry about my wife's behavior." "No, it's okay. Thank you, father-in-law. If anything else happens, let me know. Don't hesitate." "Yes, thank you." My father-in-law, who has a strong sense of justice, always stands up for me and scolds mother-in-law. Whenever he's not around, the harassment from her continues. But I've been able to manage, thanks to him. I lost my parents at a young age, so I have no one to turn to, even if I get divorced now. For someone like me, the presence of my father-in-law has been monumental. Then, one day, while at work, I got a call from my mother-in-law. This is odd. Why is she calling me at work? Picking up the phone, I was shocked to hear the news. "Your father-in-law has collapsed. Come to the hospital immediately." "What? Father-in-law? How?" "The details don't matter. Your husband Samuel is on a business trip, so you have to come." "Yes, understood. I'm on my way." Since my husband had left on a week-long business trip 2 days ago, I had no choice but to go. I explained the situation to my boss and rushed to the hospital. As soon as I arrived, we heard the doctor's explanation. The situation is unclear. He might not regain consciousness. He was fine this morning. We've done what we can. It's up to him now. What? A tense silence followed. Breaking that silence was my mother-in-law. Doctor, are you saying my husband is at risk? That it's just a matter of time before he passes? Whoa, hold on, mother-in-law. What are you talking about? Well, there's a lot to consider, like funeral arrangements and inheritance. We need to plan ahead, don't we? But why bring it up now? Father-in-law is fighting for his life. The doctor's already said there's not much hope. I wonder how much inheritance he's leaving. Mother-in-law! Even after we got home, all my mother-in-law talked about was the inheritance. She'd look at me with this smug grin and say, "You won't be getting a dime." Despite visiting the hospital daily, father-in-law's condition showed no signs of improving. My mother-in-law wouldn't even visit him, and my husband was MIA. All I could do was pray for father-in-law to wake up. A few days later, while getting ready to visit father-in-law in the morning, my husband, who had been on a business trip, finally returned home. "Samuel, why didn't you reply to my emails?" I stopped mid-sentence, because there was a strange woman standing behind him. I had a bad feeling and hesitantly asked, "Samuel, who's this woman?" "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I fell in love with her. I can't be with you anymore." "What?" I felt as if I'd been hit over the head. Unapologetically, my husband continued, "She's pregnant. I want a divorce." "What are you saying? Weren't you on a business trip?" "I was on a trip with her. That's when we found out she's pregnant." "You've got to be kidding." Not only was my husband's business trip a complete lie, but he had also gotten another woman pregnant. I felt faint. My vision started to blur. Just then, my mother-in-law rushed over, her eyes shining.
Wait, are you really pregnant? What's the baby's gender?
"We're not sure yet, but it might be a boy."
Oh my goodness, a male heir! I'm so happy.
Seeing my mother-in-law's excitement, the other woman also chimed in. "Thank you, Mom."
Oh, calling me Mom. How cute.
It was clear why mother-in-law was so ecstatic. She had never approved of me prioritizing my career over having kids. That's why she was welcoming this woman who was carrying what could be her grandchild, even if it was the result of an affair. The two of them continued to celebrate, ignoring my very existence. Then my husband handed me divorce papers.
Here, fill this out now.
What?
I'll give you $1,000 as a settlement for now. After my dad passes, I'll pay you properly from his estate during the divorce proceedings. Now, please leave. You're a burden, and I have no use for a failure of a wife like you.
I was more or less forced to sign the divorce papers. Then I was handed a measly $1,000 and kicked out of the house. A surge of fury overwhelmed me in that instant. I've had enough. I don't care anymore. If this means I'm free from my husband and mother-in-law, then that's what I truly want. But where would I go now? My parents are gone, and I can't impose on a friend's hospitality for too long. Just as I was standing there stunned, my mobile phone rang. The caller ID showed the number of the hospital where my father-in-law was admitted. Did something happen to father-in-law? I quickly answered the call. "Hello? What? Father-in-law?" It was joyous news that father-in-law had regained consciousness. I rushed to the hospital. Upon entering his room, father-in-law looked at me and gave me a warm smile. "Hey, Evelyn, you got here fast." "Father-in-law!" "Yeah, sorry to have worried you. I'm just so relieved. What would I have done if you hadn't woken up?" "I appreciate you caring so much. How's everything at home while I was here?" "Well, thing is," I told father-in-law about everything that had happened back at the house, including the fact that I had just been divorced. I poured out my deepest gratitude to him. "Thank you for always treating me like your own daughter. You've given me so much to be thankful for." Father-in-law quietly laid his hand on my teary shoulder. "Evelyn, this might not be appropriate to ask, but would you consider making me your real father?" "What?" "I heard from the hospital staff that you were the only one who came to visit, so when I woke up, I asked them to call only you." "Is that so?"
Seeing their true colors this time made me realize that blood doesn't matter. From now on, I intend to focus only on you, father-in-law. And so I decided to become father-in-law's adoptive child. After that, I started the discharge procedures for father-in-law. Once he was discharged, we both went to ring the doorbell at my in-law's house. When my mother-in-law opened the door, she was shocked to see both father-in-law and me. Father? And why are you here too? At the sound of mother-in-law's voice, my ex-husband appeared from the back of the house. His reaction was even more shocked than my mother-in-law's. Evelyn, what are you doing here with Dad? Hey, Samuel. You said you'd pay me alimony from your dad's inheritance once he passed, right? Well... So your dad is clearly in good health. How are you planning to pay that alimony? Look, I can't right now. Once my dad eventually passes and I get the inheritance, I will pay you, okay? Can we drop it? As he pleaded, breaking into a sweat, I dropped the bomb. Sorry to break it to you, but you're not inheriting anything. What? My ex-husband's face turned pale, his mouth twitching. That's when my father-in-law delivered the final blow. From now on, Evelyn is my only family. I'm giving all my property to her while I'm still alive. This house will be in Evelyn's name, so the two of you need to leave. Now. You can't be serious, Dad. Do you think I joke about this? I'm utterly done with you. All you care about is my inheritance. Get out, now! You're both worthless. Father-in-law then forces my ex-husband and his affair partner out of the house and promptly shoves divorce papers in front of mother-in-law. Just like my ex-husband tried to do to me, he somewhat aggressively pushes for her signature. Sign your name here. No way! He was resolute. You forced Evelyn to sign divorce papers, didn't you? Now sign! She let out a tiny shriek, then reluctantly signed the papers. They apparently moved into a one-room apartment with his affair partner. With all their belongings shipped to them COD, their new place must be a mess. As for me, thanks to my father-in-law, I was able to claim alimony in the divorce. We also completed the adoption paperwork, and now we're enjoying peaceful days as if we're a real father and daughter. Dad, it's nice out. How about we grab a basket and head to the park? A splendid idea, Evelyn. Speaking of which, the sandwich filling is tuna salad and roast beef, right? You never eat anything else. Ha ha ha, you got me. Even after decades, she never remembered. Don't look so glum. I'll always be here to support you, Dad. Now my life is the epitome of happiness. I never imagined such days would await me back then. There's only one thing on my mind now. I want my beloved father to stay healthy and live a long life. That's my one and only wish.
I'm Claire. I'm a 29-year-old homemaker. I've been married to Matt, who's 34, for 4 years now. We don't have any kids. I met Matt when I was about to graduate from college. I was working part-time during peak season at a medium-sized computer store my parents owned. They were short-staffed in the IT department. Back then, I used to create YouTube videos with my friends. I was good at video editing and programming, so my dad relied on me a lot. Matt was the chief of the department at that time. He was meticulous, quiet, kind, and had a great rapport with people. He also had my dad's full trust. We worked on many projects together, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. Both my dad and mom supported our relationship, and our journey to marriage was smooth. After getting married, Matt started a subsidiary company with some financial help from my dad. Matt and Dad got along so well. They looked more like a real parent and child than Dad and I did. A year after its inception, Matt's company began to thrive. That's when my dad's health started deteriorating, leading to frequent hospital visits. Being deeply involved in almost every aspect of the medium-sized company, Dad couldn't manage things as before, and the business started to decline. For my part, I was somewhat reassured that Matt would be there to help me when the time came. I thought Matt would step in if things got too bad, since he had been the chief and knew the ins and outs of the company. But even though he must have known about the situation, he didn't say a word. I assumed Matt was waiting for Dad to ask for help, respecting his pride. However, Dad's condition worsened, requiring long-term hospitalization. When I rushed to visit him after getting a call from Mom, Dad, weakened by his illness, said with a grim face, "If things continue like this, we might go bankrupt." I felt he was silently asking for help. On my way out, Mom, who was helping with the accounts, asked, "Can't we consult Matt?" Mom said he thought Dad couldn't ask for help or to represent himself if he couldn't trouble Matt, who was finally starting to make a difference after a year of independence. She said Dad wouldn't ask Matt for help because he didn't want to burden him, especially now that his business was finally picking up. Knowing Dad's stubborn yet kind nature, I knew he'd never ask for help. So I told Mom, "Don't worry, I'll ask Matt for assistance." I believed Matt would help Dad. That night, I decided to talk to Matt. While he was working on his laptop in the living room, I started, "Hey, about Dad's company?" I explained Dad's health, his low spirits, and the dire state of his business, asking if he could help. I expected him to willingly assist, but his response was the opposite. Without even looking up from his laptop, he said, "You're joking, right?" I was taken aback. Whether he had always felt this way or I just hadn't noticed, Matt seemed like a completely different person. I can't see any trace of his friendliness or kindness. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Why would I take on extra work now when my business is finally growing? Even if your dad's company goes under, it won't affect mine since we only handle IT." I had misunderstood him. He wasn't concerned about Dad at all. I was so wrong to think that Matt would take Dad's position and not speak until Dad asked for help. He didn't have the slightest compassion or concern for Dad. In disbelief, I retorted, "After all the financial support and client referrals Dad gave you when you started, isn't this a bit too cold-hearted?" After a brief pause, he coldly replied, "That is that, this is this. Mixing personal feelings with business never ends well. What if we both go under? I've come this far, and I won't do anything that's not mutually beneficial." I had to hold back my urge to shout at Matt's attitude, as if he hadn't received any favors from Dad. If I upset Matt now, I might never be able to persuade him again. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I tried again. "Then, could you at least take charge of the company until Dad gets discharged from the hospital?" No matter how many times we discussed it, Matt's answer remained the same. Time passed without any resolution, and by the end of that month, Dad's company was declared bankrupt by the court. There was nothing we could do now. Dad must have been deeply disappointed that Matt, whom he had cared for so much, didn't lift a finger to help and let the company go bankrupt so easily. Dad became completely disheartened, especially since there was no clear date for his discharge. Mom had to handle the company's debt settlement all by herself. Handling employee salaries, severance, and dealing with business partners was too much for Mom alone. I decided to tell Matt that I wanted to go back to my parents' house to help Mom at least until the debt settlement was completed. Holding back my resentment that Matt might have prevented the bankruptcy if he had acted, I said, "I'm thinking of going back to my parents' house for a while to help Mom. Can you support us with some living expenses until things settle down?" Matt, as usual, was sitting on the couch working on his laptop. I had so many things I wanted to say, but this wasn't the time for arguments. Yet again, Matt's unbelievable response came. Without showing any concern from my parents, he said, "Why? Nothing will change if you go. Think about our company." Stunned by Matt's coldness, I couldn't think straight. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" Interrupting me, Matt continued calmly. Instead of helping a bankrupt company, you should help mine. I was thinking of assigning you to do the programming for the website of our new client. My mind went blank. Are you serious? Why are you bringing this up now? Cutting me off, Matt continued speaking nonchalantly. Even though he knew my parents were going through a tough time, he said, I'm thinking of expanding the business. Claire, you're just a housewife with too much free time. Isn't it better than volunteering at your parents' place for free? Besides, it's a wife's duty to help her husband, right? He spoke as if it was someone else's problem, only caring about his business. I couldn't contain my frustration with Matt's self-centeredness. Why are you bringing this up now? You know this isn't the right time. Ignoring my heated response, he continued. Actually, I've asked my big sister to help too. She called saying she got divorced and became a single mom. She asked for support. I'm offering her a place to stay at our house, so be prepared. He was practically forcing me to agree. Matt's big sister is a piece of work. She doesn't lift a finger at home, constantly wasting money, and often gets into loud arguments with her husband, leading to calls from concerned neighbors. Once, she brought her unruly kid to our house. He scribbled on our walls, broke our appliances. It was a nightmare. After all the trouble she caused, I wonder what Matt was thinking, asking her to help with the business, especially since she knows nothing about IT. He ignored my parents when they were in need, but now he's bending over backwards for his problematic big sister. I couldn't hold back any longer. This is ridiculous. I'm not just sitting around doing nothing. How can you ignore my parents but help your big sister? Matt, unfazed, looked at me and said, She's family. It's natural to help her. And how I spend my money is my business. You couldn't help your parents because you don't earn anything. He was the very definition of an opportunist. I shouted back, So we're not family? We've supported you because we considered you family. That's why your business is thriving. Yet he calmly retorted, You're so ungrateful. Sure, you gave me a start, but my hard work built the company. Helping your parents is a waste of time. Contribute here. And by the way, my sister's moving in tomorrow. I protested, but Matt just continued with his domineering attitude. I've made up my mind. Just follow my lead. I won't allow you to go back to your parents' house. According to him, since he provides for me, I have no right to defy him. Standing tall and puffing out his chest, he declared, I don't need a woman who can't listen to me. He then pulled out divorce papers from his work bag. If you can't obey, we might as well get divorced. Why do you even have those? I asked. He had them prepared in case I pestered him too much about helping my dad's business. I was shocked at his level of disregard for anyone outside his immediate family. I was livid. Fine, I'll sign these and then go back to my parents. I snatched the papers, signed them, and started packing. As I packed, I could hear him muttering, Such a stubborn woman. Good riddance. Don't come crawling back. I responded with a breezy, Right back at ya. Goodbye, and left. I submitted the divorce papers and returned to my parents' home. Seeing me with my bags, my mom asked, What happened? After explaining, she sighed deeply, probably having her own grievances with Matt. Later, I had the rest of my belongings delivered. Not long after, I received a barrage of calls and voicemails from Matt. All his messages were desperate pleas. Come back, help me. I'll even support your parents, just come back. Matt's plea for help was likely due to his big sister. When I had called his family to report our divorce, I had a hunch something like this might happen. His mother had complained about how her children, including his sister, had gotten divorced one after another. She went on and on about his sister's bad behavior. I had seen a glimpse of it when Matt's sister once moved into the house Matt and I shared. His mother lamented and detailed the main reason for his sister's divorce. Matt's sister had frequent intense arguments with her husband about money, chores, and parenting. These disputes involved their parents, neighbors, and even the police, but she seemed to forget them over time. Apparently, just before the divorce, she got heavily into gambling and racked up a lot of debt. After the divorce, she tried to return to her parents' home with her debt, but her father disowned her. She probably turned to Matt out of desperation. From what I've heard, I can imagine the chaos at Matt's place. Matt, being protective of his big sister, is probably being taken advantage of. Who would want to go back to such a situation? Plus, Matt's sister's child is a handful. The kid doesn't listen and is incredibly aggressive. If you try to scold him for his mischief, he becomes uncontrollable. I can visualize the mess in their house. I never want to see the scribbles and broken electronics from his pranks again. I felt like if I didn't reply, I'd keep getting endless voicemails and texts. So I sent a message saying, "Thanks for the offer, but no thanks. I don't need your help. We're not family anymore. Oh, we never were, right?" Immediately after, my phone rang. Matt's voice on the voicemail pleaded, "Please help me. I can't take it anymore. I'm going bankrupt. I can't handle the kid. He's destroying the house." Of course, I didn't answer. Rumors say that by the end of the month, suspicious black cars are often seen around Matt's company. They're probably collection agencies. I've been contacted by mutual acquaintances about delays in his business operations and payments. It's hard because they're people I know, but I've already divorced him and have my father's business to think about. So I tell them that I can't help. About 6 months later, I received a letter. It was from Matt. Inside was a scribbled note and a marriage certificate. The note apologized and said his sister had left, asking if we could start over. I was flabbergasted. What was he thinking? The worst part was in tiny letters and read, "Please take care of the kid." I guess his sister left, abandoning her debt and child. I've heard his business is on the brink of collapse. No way am I going back to that mess. I sealed the letter and sent it right back. As for me, after settling my father's company's debts, I started a new programming office in my name. Employees from my father's company had been reaching out, wanting to come back. Surprisingly, some of them used to work at Matt's company. The employees who had witnessed his sister's wastefulness and arrogance, as well as Matt's recent actions, began to fear that they might be coldly dismissed someday. It seems like the already struggling company is on the verge of further decline. When they heard about my new business venture, they were overjoyed. Of course, all of them are highly skilled and ready to contribute, so I'm planning to welcome them with open arms. I'm genuinely excited about the opportunity to restart and work with these familiar faces again. And my father, who had been deeply depressed due to our company's bankruptcy and had no clear discharge date from the hospital, showed remarkable recovery upon hearing the news. He's expected to be discharged soon. He's already eager to return and work even harder than before. At the same time, I heard that Matt's company went bankrupt. I chose to completely ignore it, so I'm not sure what's happening with him now. Regardless of whether someone is family or not, it's essential to cherish relationships built on compassion and trust.
Living with my mother-in-law has put a crack in my otherwise happy marriage. My husband, without any consolation, suddenly decided that we should all live together, and he knows how difficult I get along with her. I can't forgive him. There's no way I can simply accept things as they want. I'd rather leave this house on my own accord. My name is Sarah, and I am 28 years old. I've been married to my husband, Jake, for almost 3 years. We met at a social event, dated for 2 years, and then got married. We hit it off right away because our hobbies were similar, and everything led to marriage in quick succession. Yet, there's one thing that bothers me. That is, my husband always prioritizes his mother over me. His parents divorced when he was a child, and he was raised in a single-parent household by his mother. To him, who had lived with his mother for a long time, her words are absolute. He believes everything his mother says is correct. Just the other day, right before we were about to go out, my husband blurted out something outrageous. "Sorry, Sarah, Mom just texted me. I want to go shopping. Come with me." Wait, what? We were supposed to go buy new dishes today. Sorry, Mom really insisted. I don't care about that. We've had this planned for a week now. But you can choose the dishes on your own, right? Mom can't go shopping without me. Even so, isn't it odd to prioritize your mom like this? Sorry again. Can you stop fussing? Just go on your own, Sarah. With that, he quickly left the house. What the hell was that? We had made plans first, and he just prioritizes his mother on the day? I can't believe this. In the end, I had to go out alone, and my mood was absolutely sour. As I was going around the stores alone, a text from my mother-in-law arrived. It was a photo of a delicious-looking cake and a message saying, "Jake treated me." I couldn't help but shout out loud. My mother-in-law dislikes me, so she intentionally sends me pictures of her and my husband, Jake, looking happy together. On this particular day, multiple texts from my mother-in-law kept popping up on my phone, and it was making me irritable. Jake is an incredible husband if it wasn't for the mother-in-law issue. But whenever she's involved, he immediately becomes a source of frustration. I have never liked the way my mother-in-law tries to sabotage our relationship at every turn. Looking back, she may have been bullying me since before we got married. When we visited his mother's house to announce our engagement, she looked me up and down. "Sarah, where is that dress from?" Just something I picked up at a department store sale." "I'm sorry, but it looks rather shabby. It doesn't suit my son at all." "Excuse me?" As I was taken aback by her rudeness, she didn't hesitate to continue her onslaught. "Also, your manners are lacking. You didn't say thank you when I served tea to you." I'm sorry. I was so nervous I forgot." Jake didn't stop his mother's sarcastic attack. In fact, he was laughing and saying, "Mom, you're harsh." I knew that he, having grown up in a single-parent household, cherished his mother, but I wish he'd defend me a little when I was being tormented right in front of him. In retrospect, I should have reconsidered this marriage then. Such thoughts began to consume my days. Then, one day during my work break, I checked my phone to find several missed calls from Jake. I called him back immediately, and he answered after a few rings. "Jake, is that you?" "Sarah, something terrible has happened." "Huh? What happened?" "Mom collapsed." "What? Your mom collapsed?" "Yes, I need you to leave work and come to our house now." "What? Hold on." Before I could get more details, Jake hung up abruptly. Hold on, why home? If she had collapsed, shouldn't she be at a hospital? Regardless, I headed straight for my mother-in-law's house. Upon arriving, I found my mother-in-law snoring comfortably in the living room. "You're late. Why didn't you come home earlier?" Jake, furrowing his brows, scolded me in a hushed voice. Feeling slightly taken aback, I responded, "There's train schedules, Jake. I can't help it. I heard she collapsed and I came here as soon as I could." "Huh? Aren't you worried about my mother? She just managed to fall asleep." "Well, what do you want me to say?" While growing increasingly frustrated with Jake's selfishness, I asked him, "Hey, is it okay to leave your mother at home? Shouldn't we take her to the hospital?" "She's fine. I put a pain relief patch on her." "Wait, a pain relief patch?" "Mom tripped over the doorstep and fell. She hurt her back and couldn't put the pad on herself, so she called me." "Wait a minute. You said your mom collapsed. So she just fell and hurt her back? That's it?" "What's with that tone?" Jake yelled at me, his face red with anger. "You're making it sound like my mom is exaggerating." "Well, it's just a minor fall, isn't it? When you say someone collapsed, normally you'd think it's something serious." "That's just you jumping to conclusions. Don't pin that on me." "Ugh, this isn't something I should have had to leave work early for." "You? How could you say that? Look at her. She can't even get up right now." "I don't care. There's nothing I can do here. Did you really need to call me? I had to make up an excuse to leave work early during our busiest season, and you made it sound like it was an emergency." As I let out my anger, Jake sighed, looking annoyed. "You know, Sarah, you don't seem to care about my mom at all, do you? Every time I bring her up, you get this sour look on your face. It is really rude as a wife. Huh? What? Are you trying to blame me now? No, that's not it. A normal wife should care for her husband's mother, right? I can't sense even a shred of that intention from you, Sarah. Oh, give me a break. I've told you over and over. Your mother has disliked me since the day we got married. She's always picking on me. How am I supposed to want to take care of her? What's that supposed to mean? She purposefully contacted you on the day of our plans. It's so obvious that it's deliberate. My mom is tough on you, Sarah, because you haven't been accepted by her as a worthy daughter-in-law. What? Is he for real? How can he think like that? Doesn't he see his mother's actions for what they are? Despite further arguing, we got nowhere. Before long, my mother-in-law woke up and began complaining to me. Sarah, it's so heartless of you not to worry when I've fallen. No, I rushed over here because I was worried, but you look perfectly fine. Excuse me? How could you say that? I fell and hurt my back. But you just fell, right? Saying you collapsed is a bit misleading. Oh, stop complaining. This is why I can't stand snarky women. I should have never approved of you marrying Jake. Hearing my mother-in-law's words, I felt more anger than sadness. I wanted to leave as quickly as possible and swiftly exited my in-laws' house. Checking my phone later, I saw a text from Jake. I'm worried about Mom, so I'm going to stay here for a while. Rather than caring about me, he's still fussing over his mother at a time like this. I was utterly disgusted with him. I didn't reply to the text and just went to sleep. For some time after that, he didn't come home. 1 week later, just when I was enjoying some alone time, I got a call from Jake. Could it be an apology call? I hadn't contacted him at all, and Jake might have finally realized his mistakes. With such thoughts, I answered the phone, and an unexpected response came from Jake. Hey, is that you, Sarah? It's been a while. What's up? Well, I've been talking to Mom and thought I should fill you in. Huh? Talked about what? Mom is going to live with us at our place. What? Caught off guard, my mind went blank. Trying to control my shock, I managed to muster some words. Wait a minute, living together? You mean cohabitation? Yeah, she had that fall, right? We'd be worried if something else happened, wouldn't we? So we thought we might as well live together. Hold on, you're kidding, right? There's no way I can live with her. Huh? What do you mean you can't? Don't you care about Mom? It's not like that. How many times do I have to tell you? I know I'll get harassed if I live with your mom, Jake. You understand, don't you? Are you going on about that again? Anyway, it's already decided. I've sent the stuff over there and it'll be there by tomorrow, so can you receive it? What? Wait, that's not... Well, take care. With that, Jake hung up abruptly. My frustration towards Jake exploded. He sent this stuff? This can't be a joke. Why am I, his wife, being left out of this conversation? There's no way I'm agreeing to live with her. I'll leave this house. With that resolution, I immediately began to pack up my things around the house, all to escape from the selfishness of Jake and my mother-in-law. I couldn't think of any other way at this point. The next day, the intercom rang, and a massive amount of my mother-in-law's stuff was delivered. As if waiting for the right timing, a call from Jake came in. Hello, is that you, Sarah? What? I'm kinda busy right now. Are you still mad about yesterday? I'm not mad, or rather, I don't care anymore. Good, that's a relief then. While I was trying to suppress my irritation towards my careless husband, he continued. By the way, did Mom's stuff that I sent yesterday already arrive? It arrived, and I just finished sending my stuff to my parents' house. Huh? Your parents' house? In response to his confusion, I explained briefly. I'm going back to my parents. If you want to live with your mom, go ahead and do it yourself. Hey, you're joking, right? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Nonsense? I'm serious, you know. To begin with, it's unacceptable to decide on cohabitation without any discussion. Just because of that, why are you going back to your parents' house? If you're gone, Sarah, who will take care of the house? Huh? You're not children. You can do it yourselves, right? Stop it with your nonsense. You're always speaking out of turn. Mom is angry too, you know. Let her be angry if she wants. I don't think my judgment is wrong. My assertive remark seemed to have incensed my husband. He yelled louder than I had ever heard him. Don't mess around! You're a wife, you know. Just shut up and do as you're told, you idiot. Idiot? Are you talking to me? Who else would I be talking to? Well, whatever. Go back to your parents' house until you can think clearly. Huh? When you're ready to apologize sincerely to me and Mom, come back here. If you apologize honestly, both I and Mom will forgive you. See ya. With that, he hung up the phone right away. He doesn't think he did anything wrong at all. On the contrary, he still thinks that his mom and himself are the most important. Tired of such a husband, I returned to my parents' house with my suitcase. A few hours later, the phone rang again from my husband. What? I'm busy right now. What the hell is this? From his tone of voice, I could tell he was pretty shaken. Suppressing my smugness, I asked my husband, What do you mean? Did something happen? When I got home, there's nothing left. Your stuff. I figured as much. You figured? Weren't you just going back to your parents for a few days? Do you really think that was it? Sorry, but I have no plans to return to that house. What? Don't mess with me. What am I supposed to tell Mom? I told her you would take care of everything. Not my problem. Why don't you tell your mother the truth? I screwed up, made my wife angry, and she left me. How could I say such a thing? At least, come back right now. Don't act on your own. Don't act on my own. You were the one who brought up the idea of your mom living together with us without your wife's permission. Don't start shifting the blame now. Over the phone, Jake was lost for words as I screamed at him. Jake, who always looked down on me and made fun of me with his mother. I can't forgive him anymore. I will settle all the grudges I've held so far. Jake, what do you think I am? I'm not a servant for you and your mother, nor am I a toy. Don't think everything you do is permissible. Hey, Sarah, calm down. Shut up. You've never really listened to me before. It's too much to expect me to just go along with what you say. From now on, I have no intention of taking care of you or your mother. I'd rather be single than do that. Don't say things like that. I don't intend to get a divorce. I couldn't care less what you think. I'm sick and tired of being pushed around by you too. You guys can just figure things out on your own. I'm done. Never interfere with my life again. You and your mother can go to hell together, you foolish duo. Wait, Sarah. Ignoring Jake calling my name, I hung up the phone in a fit of anger. I headed straight to the lawyer's office to request our divorce. Although it took some time, the divorce was successfully granted. After I left, it seems Jake reluctantly began a life with his mother alone. However, without someone to do the housework, they started bickering, causing a rift in their once close relationship. As for me, after the divorce, I decided to move out of my family home. I rented an apartment near my work and started putting even more effort into my job. As a result, I was offered a promotion and my salary increased accordingly. I now find fulfillment in my work. I'm truly glad I severed ties with that mother and son duo early. From now on, I want to live my own life for myself.